Hello, my name's Norman and I'm a teacher of academic writing. In this video I'm going to show you how to improve your own academic writing, and in this video I'm going to explain the meaning of a line of argument. What exactly is a line of argument? Now, this is the third and final aspect of assessment awareness. So let's imagine you have been given a written task at university. You hand it to me for marking. I need to assess it. So let me ask you, what is your argument? Now, can you work out probably what that word argument means? Now, as I read your written task, I also need to think to myself, what is your argument? So does that give you an idea of what is meant by an argument? Well, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to define an argument as the entire answer to your writing task. Now, there are thousands of various definitions of what an argument is on the internet. But if I'm assessing your written task, your argument should show me at least three things. That there are more things to look for, but I'm going to focus on three important ones. The first one, you need a conclusion. You need a claim. Now, your conclusion is your final comment that answers the written task. This is your destination. This is what you want the examiner to know. This is your final answer. Now, that conclusion needs to be supported. This leads me on to the second point of your argument. You need evidence for that conclusion. How did you get to that conclusion? Why did you make that conclusion? You need to support your conclusion with evidence. Now, that evidence can be data, it can be examples, it can be your research. But you need to have evidence. Now, a lot of students make the mistake of stating claims in a paragraph. Then there's no support given. Then they move on to another claim and then another claim. So a paragraph looks like a list of ideas. None of the ideas has support, and if some ideas do have support, that support needs to be connected to the conclusion. And that's the third item of your argument. You need a connection between your evidence and your conclusion. How does that evidence, how does that data, how does that example actually support your claim? So those are three key parts of your argument: your conclusion, your evidence for that conclusion, then you need the connection between the evidence and the conclusion. You need an explanation of how the two relate. Now, to use an informal example, I really should have sunscreen on today. That's a claim. Now, I might not need to explain that if you're in England today. You'll know why I need to wear sunscreen. but maybe you're not from this cultural context, so you might not understand why I say I really should wear sunscreen. Now, many students make the same mistake when they're writing. They make the claim, but they don't give me any evidence because they assume I know the background. They assume I know the context. Well, why do you think I should really wear sunscreen today? What's the evidence for that claim? Well, if you're not in England right now, you won't know. It's about 30 degrees in this field. The sun is almost overhead, and my skin is very, very pale. That's the evidence. Now, with that evidence, you probably will understand why I need to wear sunscreen. But you might not. So how does that evidence, the fact that it's 30 degrees, the fact that the sun's nearly overhead, the fact that I have very pale skin, how does that mean, why does that mean that I should wear sunscreen? So for those who don't know, I will need to explain. I will need to give a connection between the data and the conclusion, and this is called a warrant. My skin will burn within a few minutes of exposure to this sun. Why? Well, at this time of day, it's getting close to midday. The sun in the sky is almost directly overhead. The sun's at its strongest, so my skin will burn very quickly. Sunscreen will prevent that burn. So there we have the claim or conclusion, I should wear sunscreen. The evidence, it's 30 degrees, the sun's overhead, I have pale skin. The warrant, my pale skin will burn very quickly under the midday sun because the sun's rays are at their strongest. So I hope that's explained what's in your argument. Your argument should at least have those three things. There are other things. So to give you another picture of what an argument is, let's consider you have to travel from Heathrow Airport and you're going to Bristol to start a course there. How do you travel from Heathrow to Bristol? Well, let's consider Bristol is your destination. Bristol is your conclusion. Which method are you going to take to get to Bristol? Train, bus, car, taxi. Maybe you would like to take an unusual way. You might want to go by canal, or you might want to take a bicycle. That's how you're going to get there. Why would you want to take a bicycle? Why would you want to take a canal boat? Well, you have plenty of time. You're not in a hurry. You want to see the countryside. This is support for that decision, for the how. Now, you also might want to look at, well, what's wrong with taking a train? What are the problems with taking the train? You might want to consider that side of things. So if you consider your conclusion, that's the destination of where you want to get to. This is what the examiner needs to know. This is your final answer to the essay or the written task. How you get there needs to be signposted, needs to be evident. The route you take needs to be clear to the reader. And this is called the line of argument. So from the beginning of your writing through to the conclusion at the end, the direction you take and why you're taking that direction needs to be explicitly stated. One point needs to follow on from another point. It needs to be logical. Your claim needs to be supported. Your support needs to connect, needs to have a warrant to the conclusion. Now, if you do this, the person who's reading can follow the route you take, and they understand why you took that route, the reasons for that route, and why you didn't take another route. So this is what is meant by a clear line. Now, you have the argument, you have the clear line. The methods to do this, the overall structure of your piece needs to logically flow in sequence, if possible. Now, the construction of your writing and the logical sequence of your writing, well, I'll cover that in another video, but just for now I'm explaining what is meant by argument and what is meant by a clear line of argument. Now, if you need to pass, if you need good marks, your conclusion needs to be explicit, your evidence needs to be sufficient, it also needs to be strong enough, and you need to have that warrant that connects your evidence to your claim and conclusion. Now, if there are any teachers listening, this is what's called the Toulmin model of argument, and I would thoroughly recommend it for academic writers. Now, this is the final part in assessment awareness. I don't know if you've looked at the previous ones. The first one, you need to show understanding. You understand the topic, you understand the task, you understand your materials, you understand the research. You need to show a clear level of understanding. Then you need to show independent thinking. You're not a parrot, you're not a robot, you've assessed the materials, you've thought about the materials, you've evaluated and judged the materials and come to an opinion. And then the last one, you need a clear line of argument. So that's a summary of the 3 key assessment criteria I think you should need to be aware of before you start to write. Now, for the next video, I'm going to look at actual mechanics of paragraph construction. The previous videos have been about the general overall things you need to think about before you start writing. The next video, we're going to look at how to write a paragraph. Now, before I get burnt, I'm going to say goodbye and see you next time. Goodbye.